or Council President Flynn, tell us about kind of what's been going on the council lately. We take a few minutes and then do some Q&A.
That's perfect, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Ward 4, for inviting me, and apologize for being in my car. I'm just going into an event in a few minutes in Chinatown. This is the AAPI Heritage Month. So I'm speaking at an event for in support of AAPI community here in Boston. The big news to all of you is obviously we're in the budget process now. So we're in the middle of hearings. We literally have about 4 or 5 hours of hearings every day, and we have to vote on the budget on or before July 1st. So we have each city department coming in, explaining what their budget is for that department, what the money will be used for, what services, and what impact it'll have on the residents. And this is a unique budget opportunity now. The city council now has the ability to amend the budget, but we still cannot go over the total budget that the mayor has proposed. So if we wish to add something in the budget, we have to also take something away. So it's a new process. It's the first time we're doing it. We have a new Ways and Means chair, actually, that took over from Mayor Kim Janey. Tanya Fernandez Anderson is the budget chief, Ways and Means chief. So everything is going well so far, and a lot of good testimony as well from the public. There's still opportunities for the public to engage us on what's important to them. I was meeting with the mayor's team and with some residents of Chinatown recently on the impact of private sewers also in the south end. How can we deal with a private sewer line if there's an issue and it's broken or it's ruptured? Whose responsibility is it to pay for it? So we're trying to work with the mayor's office in Boston Water and Sewer on that critical issue. As you know, there's a lot of private sewers in the south end, so it certainly packs a lot of residents. We had the opening last week of the South End baseball. We marched from the Villa Victoria down to Peters Park with Mayor Wu. It was a great day. Great to see so many South End residents supporting a wonderful organization. Other events that came up was the United South End Settlements, but we'll stop there and just wanted to mention one other event that I know residents of the South End would be interested in: the upcoming community preservation funds for FY 2023. There'll be another rolling round. The application will soon be out. There's going to be a CPA meeting on May 18th and June 22nd as well. So it's a great program. Encourage, especially the parks and recreation, just to apply. There's a lot of funds available for parks, open spaces, historic preservation as well. Housing, summer jobs is another one. The application is available to youth on summer jobs. So again, want to encourage young people to apply for that. But having said that, let me stop there and take questions. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak also.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. So as I usually do it, for questions, you can either unmute and directly ask your question yourself. You can drop your question in the chat. You can use the hand raise function. And I see Ben has a question.
Thanks, Councilor Flynn. You know that I've supported early child development in the city for a long time. And the mayor has just had a new office of early child development and appointed Kristen McSwain from the Boston Foundation. So I hope that you will be an advocate for that office because that is critically important to the health of the city. And I also hope that there would be support from Smart from the Start. As you know, we spoke about that. And also mental health issues in the city as a whole. And I hope that we can invite you back at the end of the budget process because this is a new experiment in shared power within the city.
Thank you, Dr. Ben. I agree with you on all three points that you made. I'm certainly available anytime to speak with you in any group. And maybe we'll talk over the next week or the next 2 weeks, and I'll give you a better update on some of the mental health counseling that's in the budget. But just as an FYI, listening to so many residents speak in public testimony, listening to my constituents from the South End, from the Chinatown, from South Boston, that is probably the number one issue is mental health services, not just for BPS students, but mental health services for young people, especially all across the city, especially in communities of color as well. So it's something that we've stressed years past, but this is a critical time just because of the pandemic and the impact that has had on young people, especially.
Great. And Bruce, if you want to ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Councilor Flynn, Bruce Bickerstaff. Could you expand a little bit on the South End settlements and that development that has taken place, replacing the Harriet Tubman House?
Yeah, the United South End settlements, I mentioned that as it related to a recent event they had to raise money for their camp and to support programming, especially daycare type programming. So they had a fundraiser over the other night that I attended. That's the reason I mentioned that issue.
Thank you. Oh, just a footnote as well. Though I live in Mission Hill, I live on Mission Hill. My church is Union United Methodist, 485 Columbus Avenue. So I will probably be in touch with your office as well, or Pastor Jay Williams, as it relates to the historic preservation, because our building is quite old and still we're fortunate, but still in need of help as it requires to renovate and update the building and keep it safe.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. And just as an FYI, I always invite Reverend Jay to give the opening prayer at the City Council, usually in June, in celebration of Pride Month. That church is actually just over the border. That's represented now by Tanya Fernandez Anderson. But I'm certainly a supporter and will certainly work with you on any CPA related issues to support the church and in its mission.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'll ask a quick question of my own that your point just there, Council President Flynn, reminded me of with talking about district borders. Is there a sense of the timeline for city council redistricting happening? Since I know earlier this year, the council hosted a series of kind of listening sessions to hear about people in different parts of the city about what they wanted to see out of new city council districts. Do you have a sense of the next steps coming from that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jonathan. The districts have to be it has to be in effect by this November. I believe this November 5th or 6th or so. It has to be signed and agreed to by that date. And the reason for that is if you want to run for city council, you have to live in the district for exactly 1 year. So I say that because we're in the budget season now. We haven't done the community engagement process that we usually do in the summer, but I expect it'll be happening soon. Councilor Ricardo Arroyo is the chair of redistricting committee. He's also obviously a candidate for district attorney, but I know there will be a robust discussion and engagement with the public as it relates to redistricting. And just a side note, I have the most population of any district councilor, so I'm going to end up losing population for the next term. I don't know where that's going to be. You know, every area of my district has exploded, especially the South Boston waterfront, the South End, and the downtown area, the financial area, the Boston Garden area. So I'm going to end up losing about 10,000 or 15,000 residents, unfortunately.
And then thinking of that, just one quick follow-up question. Do you have a sense of the precinct lines when those will be finalized by the city? They may have been already. I just haven't seen anything kind of formal from that, because coming out of the redistricting, there was, since the legislature split so many precincts on this in the city in the maps that they drew, that there's talk about kind of redrawing them. I know that's something that hits Ward 4 especially, because we were 6 out of our 10 precincts are split in the new maps in some way or another. Some of that can be easily shuffled around by redrawing lines in some ways, some of it less easily, but we're just curious if you know when the Elections Commission was going to be finalizing it, if they haven't already. Yeah,
it could be any day. That has to be approved before you know, we even begin redistricting. So the re-precincting aspect of it is critical, but I expect that will be done within the next couple days or the next week or two at the most. But it's a critical part of it, and it's a major part of redistricting too. The one thing I would ask Ward 4 if they want to do, if they don't have to give me an answer now, but at some point on, as it relates to redistricting, you know, I'd really like to hear from the South End residents in Ward 4 what they would like to see as it relates to the next city council district. So it's just something to think about. I take this position very seriously. I represent the South End as equally as any other district, but I would like to hear at some point just what South End residents think about what redistricting means to them and their future. It's not about my future; it's about what's important to the neighborhood. So I'm interested and willing to listen to anyone at any time, and Ian would welcome that conversation.
No, I think that's a great idea, and I think I can follow up with our kind of our e-board and planning, but it's something that could be a good idea, bringing together any of the other ward committees in the South End that want to be involved, the large number of neighborhood associations that we have, as well as some of like the tenant associations and community kind of community groups in the South End for kind of doing some type of, let's say, like joint event on kind of redistricting in the South End.
Yeah, that's important, because literally District 2 goes all the way up to the Prudential Building.
Mm-hmm.
It includes parts of Beacon Hill, parts of Back Bay, all of the Bay Village. So there's a lot of areas that we need to have a discussion about.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And then any other questions that folks have for Council President Flynn?
And Jonathan, I just wanted to say thank you to Ward 4, but also to recognize Senator Brownsberger too. He's been a very good partner, as have all of the South End elected officials as well. I see John Santiago out at various events all the time. So John and the senator are great to work with.
One quick thing, if I hear no other questions, I'll make my quick thing, and I know you have another event to go to is, since I know this is really the first time that the council will be able to kind of amend the mayor's budget, even though, as you noted, it can't add to the total, so everything's a trade-off. Is there anything in particular that you're hoping in that process to advocate for to get greater funding when that comes up in the council?
Well, Dr. Ben mentioned mental health counseling. That's a critical part of this upcoming budget, but also after school programs for students, students at risk, and support for students with disabilities as well is something that I'm going to advocate for. But the pandemic has had a devastating impact on students in need. So that's where my focus will be on as it relates to this budget.
And then just quickly, Ben and Jane, I see a hand up, and Bruce, is that okay, so you just took that down, so I guess it's old hand, but I'll give you the final question, Ben and Jane.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank the counselor for being such a good representative to the South End. We haven't had it before and we're grateful.
Well, thank you, Jane. I'm honored to represent the people of the South End. I'm honored to come to the South End frequently. My wife and I were at the Hayes Park last week, but we love the community, we love the people, and it's an honor to represent the residents.
I want to echo that. Thank you for all you do for us, Councilor Flynn. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
But Margaret, is that a question?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And I'm just going into an event here in Chinatown. It's on the Greenway. It's in support of the AAPI Heritage Month. So let's talk soon, okay?
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
One matter of business to do quickly, if folks are amenable. I had sent out before, in following up our discussion from last meeting, a resolution for Ward 4 in support of the unionization effort at some of the local Starbucks locations. Something that's been happening kind of across the country as well as in Boston, and that's apparently been like a particularly hot button thing apparently at the South End location, which is temporarily closed, and which seems to be as like a part of a long-standing labor battle happening at the South End location. But would folks be kind of supportive of kind of taking up that resolution? Is there a motion? I'll take Ben's thumbs up as a motion. I'll take Nina's nod as a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Anybody wishing to abstain? Okay, that passes. And then again, I know Representative Livingstone, I'll have you up for a bit, then I'll invite kind of Senator Brownsberger and Melissa Stacy, since I know kind of Livingstone, you have the Ward 5 meeting coming up. But I'll put you on spotlight if that's okay in a sec. I think you're muted.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, just thought if you want, tell us a little bit about what the legislature has been up to. Any things that you'd like to bring to our attention. We'll kind of have some Q&A afterwards.
Thanks. And I apologize. I'm actually walking home from my son's t-ball practice, fulfilling my role as assistant coach. But it's great to see everyone. And the legislature is busy, and it's getting to the busiest time of the year, where we're towards the end of the session, and hopefully it's going to be a productive finish. Some of there's some major things that are in conference between the House and the Senate, and that I hope to bring to a resolution. And then there's some things that are coming up, and I can touch upon those. Some of the things that are in conference that I would anticipate being done in short order, particularly something that this committee has been involved in is election reform. And the House and the Senate each passed very good bills. And so I think the final product is going to be excellent for Massachusetts and expand voter rights. I hope it's includes everything. There was a vote on same-day voter registration that failed in the House, that succeeded in the Senate, and I think that's the biggest issue. In addition to that, the House and the Senate have each passed an energy bill, and that's in conference committee. And every time we do a major bill to address the climate crisis, and this term is going to be no different. I thought that the House was going to do a second climate bill, but the way that the Senate did it, I think it's all going to be resolved in one conference. And so I don't know, I met the other day with the chair to talk about something that I didn't put in the House bill because I thought there was going to be a second bill, and but it sounds like it's not an issue to bring that up for the conference. There's also a transportation bill that I think is going to be done that just started moving to last year. The House and the Senate passed a significant transportation bill to do the bond authorization for borrowing for the next 7 years. Because of some of the federal programs, there needs to be specific matching. And so we're taking up another bill that's being characterized not only as a transportation bill, but an infrastructure bill. And I would expect that's going to be taken up in the next couple of weeks. Locally, something that Senator Brownsberger, Representative Santiago, and I are all working on is whether or not to sell the Hines Convention Center or allow the governor to do so. And if so, under what conditions. The governor put that in the economic development bill to start a discussion. And, I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think should happen, if anything, to that. One of the bills that I filed that I think is in a good place is a bill to add make the survivors of abuse a protected class with respect to employment. Right now, under Massachusetts law, everyone's at will unless there's a specific employment agreement or they're in a union, and they can be fired for any reason as long as it's not illegal. And one of the reasons that is not illegal is if somebody's a victim or the survivor of abuse. And so if somebody reveals it to their employer, the employer today could fire that person. I think that's ridiculous. And filed legislation with the Women's Bar Association to change that. But then also the complicated part of the bill is creating an interactive process to have the employee be comfortable enough to fully disclose and have the employer be able to work with them on accommodations that they may need. Things as simple as, not putting their phone number on a public facing website. And that's been the complicated part of the bill. I think we've worked through those, and several business groups have endorsed our bill. There was a Globe editorial last week about it, trumpeting that, and I think it actually just moved to the House a little today. And so some of the other things that I'm working on that I know your committee's been really interested in have been housing. And one of my housing bills is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, giving tenants the same opportunity. And I know Senator Brownsberger and Representative Santiago have been very supportive. We passed that last term, and then Governor Baker vetoed it. And so I'm hopeful this term we're able to pass that. And then I know this committee was very supportive last term of something I was the lead sponsor of with the Row Act, where we work closely with Planned Parenthood and NARAL, now it's called Reproductive Equity, to codify a row in Massachusetts, clean up our statute and expand access in several ways. And that effort was incredibly successful because of everybody working together. I appreciate the letters from this committee to support that effort. And we, as a result, are in a better place than many states regarding access in light of the Supreme Court's seemingly imminent decision to completely take away that precedent that's been in place for more than 50 years. And over the last week, I think just about every legislator that supported that has been looking for ways to do more and expand access even more, make Massachusetts much more of a sanctuary. We've already seen an increase in out-of-state people coming to Massachusetts to take advantage of reproductive services. I think that's going to continue. In the House budget, we provided funding for the first time to aid with those efforts. And in the Senate budget, they outdid us and put even more money in. And so I think you're going to see from the legislature in the near term efforts to improve access to care in Massachusetts, hopefully improve protections to doctors that do those services. But the basic right to an abortion is secure in Massachusetts, regardless of what the Supreme Court decides. So those are some of the bigger things that are happening in the legislature. I really love the coalition of partners that I have. They also represent Ward 5, both in the Senate and in the House. And yes, I can take questions if people have questions.
Awesome, thank you. Bruce, I see a hand up.
I'm sorry, I was a little slow on the unmute.
No
I
worries.
can represent Livingstone. Question: is there in the consideration for sale of the Heinz Auditorium? Is there anything that speaks to the improvement of or a slush fund or a fund going to the MBTA to improve the track, the access, and in particular pedestrian interface, because you know, you have to go across the street to get to the other side at Heinz. You don't have the opportunity. So I was just wondering if that was in part of the bill's consideration, that money be allocated to the T.
Not so far. I mean, the Baker administration filed a very simple bill to authorize the sale, and then said there was a breakdown of the money. Part of it would go to, a percentage would go to Back Bay businesses and residents, without a lot of specificity of what that meant. And then the rest would go to affordable housing, most of it in Boston, and then some of it outside of Boston. And in my discussions with the Baker administration, the governor wants the ability to sell and doesn't care as much about the details of what happens with respect to conditions on the sale or where the money goes.
You want me to throw this up into there?
No. And
Kids are kids.
yeah, thanks. And so what he did, and so right now we're having that discussion, and that's the type of just thing that I'm talking about with Senator Brownsberger, Representative Santiago, Representative Mikowitz, Mayor Wu, and the councilors, Kenzie Bach and Ed Flynn. And so all ideas are welcome. With respect to the Heinz Convention Center, I think that the big improvements, not the Heinz Convention Center, the Heinz T, the biggest improvements, if they happen, are going to be when the developer that's been awarded the rights to parcel 13 does a development, or the T gives up on them and just fixes the station. The parcel 13 developer, I think they have a proposal that's much better than their prior proposals, where before it was a luxury hotel and luxury condos. Now they're saying they're going to propose 125 units of affordable housing in Back Bay, and then a lab space. And so I'm excited to see if that's real and to see
Exactly.
if that happens. But if it does, that they're going to, as part of their commitment to the T, they have to make significant improvements to the station. There'd be ADA accessible entrances on Boylston and on Mass Ave. You'd still have to cross the street, but at least it'd be easier for many people to access.
Certainly. And just if I may, is add on, if you can make notes, have your son make a note, and he'll remind you to maybe have that have that be part of the conversation going forward. And I know I have a kind of a general sense of how these things play forward, but if you don't ask, or if you don't see the idea, it will never be on the table for consideration.
Absolutely. I get my best ideas from other people.
Well, thank you. Consider me other people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question of my own regarding the Hines. And then I'll tag in something just very quick from Helen Cox and then go to Ben Siegel. That is there any attention to what would be like a natural substitute for the role that the Hines played during the pandemic as a mass vaccination site? So when I think about the Hines, like I can't say I've ever gone to a convention thing at the convention center, even though other people have, but it was a transit accessible location that had a very good operation during the pandemic to do vaccination that was near the commuter rail and near several lines of the T. And something that you don't have too many of in the city. Hopefully, in the ideal world, we will not need a mass vaccination site. I was not sure again in the future. But has there been any attention to what are the other locations that would serve that function if the Hines does not serve that function any longer?
I think that's part of the evaluation.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of discussion on all the things Hines brings to Back Bay, and how you'd replicate that. And then even if you could replicate it with a development, it could be out of service for 5 to 10 years, even if everything went ideally.
Right.
And so it's a difficult thing. I don't know. I'm spending a lot of time thinking about it, and it's a difficult thing to figure out how to get right.
And then a very quick question from Helen Cox, and then I'll go to Ben Siegel. Helen wanted me to ask about the status of the Work and Family Mobility Act, kind of the driver's license bill, and having passed the House and passed the Senate. I know that there's now a conference committee, or at least, I don't know if everybody's been appointed to it, or just some people have been appointed to it already. I was like, I know that was mentioned in the State House News Service earlier today, but where does that stand, and what do you see as the likely timeline, knowing especially of the governor's opposition and the likely need for an override of a veto?
I think there's a likely need for an override of a veto, but there was an overwhelming majority in the House and the Senate for that bill. So I don't think the governor doesn't have any leverage. Which is part of why he complained so publicly before the Senate bill, before the Senate took up their bill, to try to pressure them to do what the House didn't do, and they didn't. I think there are minor differences between the House and the Senate bill, so I would hope that it would be done very quickly, but you never know. It's some things in the legislature take much longer than I anticipate. But you would think with the minor differences that it would be a quick conference, and everybody was appointed. The 3 members of the House, it was Bill Strauss, Margaret Devers, and a new rep from the Cape, Zayas, that were appointed, and then there were 3 from the Senate as well. So there's a full conference, and so hopefully they meet quick and resolve very minor differences between the bills.
Great. And then Ben.
Hi, Representative Livingstone. I want to thank you very much for the Roe Act, particularly for teenagers who don't have to go through judicial bypass, 16 and older, to access abortion. But I'm just wondering from a health perspective, what the status of the Vargas bill is, that is eliminating religious objections to vaccinations.
Yeah, I like that bill, but it hasn't risen to the top of the stack. I don't know. I'll have to check in with Andy about the exact status, and I can get back to you on that. Getting controversial bills through the legislature is difficult. It's easy when everyone agrees. The Roe Act was an example of that. We got through by the narrowest of margins. In order to do an override, you need 106 votes. The final override had 107 votes, and a lot of people, took a lot of crap to get through there. It had radio ads played against them. Had the Republican Party did Facebook ads against me, saying I like to kill babies, and for the vaccine stuff, it's that same type of thing that it doesn't make people excited about taking up a bill, and that one hasn't hit. I've been talking to constituents in Cambridge for a while about it, and it's it seems almost like we needed like a mass outbreak of measles in order for that to get the attention it needed to pass. So I know Andy's a really talented legislator. He's working hard to build the coalition within the legislature. It's a bill I'm supportive of, and so hopefully we'll be able to get it done.
Thanks.
And any other questions that folks have for Representative Livingstone? Questions going once. I'll just notice that you're kind of lucky enough to come November be representing even more of Ward 4. For this, we know that the district will now, as of November, will have, or what technically that exists now, extend to include the parts of Ward 4 that are in Back Bay, so around the Avalon Towers, kind of the buildings around the Prudential, as well as most of the East Fens.
Yeah, my district's right now ends at the southern line is Boylston Street, except for one precinct of Ward 4, 4-6 in East Fenway. And now the Back Bay line will be Huntington Ave. And then once you cross Mass Ave, I don't get to the Whole Foods now. And instead I'm gonna get to the Orange Line station at Mass Ave. And then it goes all the way to Ruggles Station. And so much deeper into Fenway, much more of Northeastern. I pick up your chair as a constituent, along with many. And so I look forward to, I've been appearing for this committee for a while, but getting to know you better.
Nina, do you have a quick question? And then give a quick question and then to our next speakers.
Hi. I'm just wondering if you had any updates on the Charles Street bike lane. I know they're doing a lot of work here on Tremont Street, narrowing it down, which is awesome for safety and better usability for everyone. And I know we've spoken in the past about that. I'm wondering if there've been any updates that you've heard about.
No, I've had a lot of discussions with the city. I've been very frustrated with them, particularly about Cambridge Street. They've done a tremendous effort of public outreach on Cambridge Street, and the technical, political, everything issues of Cambridge Street are much easier than Charles Street. And I'm surprised they haven't rolled that out yet. And what I've encouraged the city to do is to they need to have the same type of outreach they've done for Cambridge Street for Charles Street before they talk about doing anything. And it's and they haven't today. So
Okay. Keep watching.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'll say enjoy the Ward 5 meeting if you head over in a few minutes, and I'll use that as a quick plug to everybody in terms of things that Ward 4 and 5 are doing together, that I hope to see people at the candidate forum that we have for the Attorney General race on Monday. And I can drop the link for that in shortly. Mia, can I get a kind of a round of Zoom applause?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the time.
I'll bring up Heather next, and then Melissa and kind of Senator Brownsberger, if you're still here, I'll put both of you on spotlight.
Thank you, John.
Will is off video, so I can't. Senator Brownsberger, when you come back, I will message you, and hopefully, but Melissa, I'll let you start off.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Let me find you and put you, okay, add spotlight. Great.
Hi, thank you so much. Senator, I know we talked about me going first, but I know you have a commitment. Would you rather switch that up?
No, I think it makes sense for the program for you to go first.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I don't know if Rep. Livingston is still on, but he is a supporter of this legislation, so just wanted to say thank you to him for that. So thanks for having me. My name is Melissa Stacy. I am the Regional Advocacy Manager for Compassion and Choices, based in Holliston, Massachusetts, but I cover the entire Northeast, and so I'm honored to be here tonight. For those that don't know, Compassion and Choices is a nationwide organization. We're focused on ensuring that everyone knows all of their end-of-life options and advocating for various types of end-of-life options. So I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about medical aid in dying. And share with you a little bit about the legislation that's been proposed here in Massachusetts. And as I begin, I always like to start and make sure we're all have the same definition of what medical aid in dying is. And so in the instance of our legislation here in Mass, medical aid in dying is defined as a medical practice in which a terminally ill, mentally capable adult with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, that they may request from their doctor a prescription for medication that they can choose to self-ingest to bring about a peaceful death and end their suffering. So that is really the definition of what medical aid in dying is. I also want to clear up about what medical aid in dying is not. It is not suicide. The American Association of Suicidology has actually stated and recognized that medical aid in dying is completely different from suicide, and it's not something that falls under their purview. And a number of national medical groups, including the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, the American Medical Women's Association, the American Medical Student Association, and others, have adopted policies that oppose the term assisted suicide or suicide in referring to medical aid in dying, because they are two drastically different things. The other piece that I always like to point out is that this is not euthanasia. In that definition, you heard me say that the patient must self-ingest, and it is not something that someone else can do for them. We'll talk through the bill and safeguards, but I just like to make that distinction because oftentimes people ask that question. So in regards to medical aid in dying here in the US, so far, 10 states and the District of Columbia have authorized medical aid in dying. Oregon was the first way back in 1997. And the most recent one was New Mexico this past in 2021. And so we have a lot of information about what works and what doesn't. And the Massachusetts bill has really been built off of those safeguards and the lessons learned in other states and jurisdictions over the past 25 plus years. So here in Mass, we have two bills. They are now merged into one. We originally filed two bills. They're now merged into one as a Senate bill, and it's Senate Bill 1384. And I will put the link for all of you in the chat, just so you have it if you want to take a look at the legislation at any time. It really is focused on that and built on that original Oregon Death with Dignity Act, which is also what it's called, but the bill name is an act relative to end of life options here in Mass, and it would do exactly what the description that I read earlier allows. It would allow Massachusetts adult residents who are found mentally capable and have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live to request a prescription from their doctor. And that 6-month prognosis is one of the same criteria for being hospice eligible as well. So it's part of a standard of care. So there's a number of safeguards in this legislation, and I'm going to run through some of them. Please know that there are many more. But first, it has to be confirmed by 2 doctors that a person has been deemed mentally capable and has a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. Both are things that are part of the standard of care and medical professionals are used to doing. And it really needs to be clear that individuals are not eligible for this simply due to age or disability. They have to meet the criteria of the 6-month prognosis and be mentally capable. The attending physician, when the first request is asked, must inform the patient of all of their end-of-life options, including hospice, palliative care, and any other choices, including medical aid in dying. And we have found that in states where medical aid in dying has been passed, that the end-of-life care options are actually much more robust between patients and their medical providers, because there's so much more education that medical providers receive in regards to end-of-life option. And so it really helps with those conversations. This legislation is optional for every single person involved. So it's optional for the patient. At any point, they can opt out. It doesn't matter where they are in the process. It's optional for the physicians, both primary as well as the secondary physician. It's optional for the pharmacists and any other healthcare provider. So there are no penalties for a healthcare provider who feels that this is against a personal belief or whatever reason. They can step back from participating in the process. And as I stated, and you'll hear me state regularly, that the patient must be able to ingest the medication. They can be assisted through someone taking the medication and putting it, holding a cup so they can sip it through the straw, but they must be able to swallow it or inject it through a feeding tube or some other feeding apparatus in order to ingest it into their body. So within the bill, an individual has to make 2 requests, 15 days apart, one oral, the second one has to be written. The second request, the written request, has to be witnessed by 2 people, one of whom cannot benefit from the patient's death or be related to the patient in any way. The medication cannot be prescribed. So after they see the 2 doctors, they also have to go through, in Massachusetts, they'd have to go through a mental health evaluation by a licensed mental health provider. And that provider would have to sign off before the physician is able to write the prescription. The prescribing doctors have to record in medical documentation, and the state would be tracking that information so that records could be kept of what patients and how many have requested the medication, as well as how many have actually ingested. And for providers who participate in good faith under the law, they are not held liable and cannot be held liable for criminal involvement in this. However, there are stiff criminal penalties for people, family members, whoever that may be found to coerce a patient or pressure them into using this law. And the patient must be the only one that is able to request the medication It cannot be requested by a family member or a proxy, they cannot have a guardian. And life insurance payments cannot be denied to people to family members who utilize medical aid in dying, and on the death certificate, the underlying cause of death is the illness and disease, not medical aid in dying, which is standard. And I think one of the great examples that I like to use from one of our amazing advocates, Dr. Kligler, is, when you think about the World Trade Center, none of the people that entered those buildings intended to go to work and die that day. And many of them made the choice to jump and not go down in the building. And the medical examiner, when he went to fill out the death certificates, listed the cause of death as terrorism and not suicide. And it's the same, very similar instance for people who opt for medical aid in dying. They know they're going to die. Many of them want to live, but their disease has progressed to the point where they will not. And so this option for them is the best option available to alleviate the suffering that they are having at their end of life. So that is the bill in a nutshell. I think the last thing I'll say is just a reminder that it is completely optional for every single person involved, not just the patients, but everyone across the board. And so I'm going to stop there and turn it over to one of our incredible champions for this legislation, Senator Brownsberger, who has just been phenomenal supportive of this. Senator?
Thank you, Melissa. That was a great overview. Really, what I hope people take away is actually how I feel about this. This bill has almost too many safeguards in it. I think it's gonna be very difficult for patients to jump through all of these hoops. But that's kind of what we've put in place and what I think is necessary for a majority of legislators to feel comfortable about it. But so I think we have a bill that is extremely robust. I've done a lot of work to assess where my colleagues are on this, and I think there's a lot of support for it, and I'm hopeful that we can get it to the top of the agenda and move it along. I want to say what I think this is really about. I think my father who passed away about a year ago, was a very strong advocate for this bill. And what brought him to it, I think, was he was a psychiatrist, and he spent a lot of his time working with elderly patients. And then he retired at a normal age, but still had plenty of energy, and actually ended up continuing his career as the medical director of a hospice. So he spent a lot of time with people at end of life. And I think the basic insight is, like, most people near the end of their life really are not afraid of dying per se. They've had a lot of time to think about that, and many of them are elderly and have lived a long life. The one thing they really are afraid of is horrible suffering, which really can go along with many illnesses. And whether or not they ever choose to exercise the options created by this legislation, it really gives them a lot of comfort to know that they can break the glass and pull the lever and escape if they are on the cusp of or in the middle of real suffering. So I think this is very humane legislation. I think this is something that will give people psychological comfort, real comfort, as they approach the possibility of suffering at the end of life. So I feel it is a bill that can be very important to some people, and it's something we really should do. And I'm very hopeful that my colleagues will develop the sense of urgency necessary to move this bill forward.
Great. Do you want to start opening up the floor for Q&A? Great.
Sure.
And I'll take you both off spotlight and allow it to be speaker view for Q&A, as I tend to do. Nina, I see you first, then Yvette, then Ben and or Jane. So let me just remove spotlight. Remove spotlight. So Nina, you can ask a question.
That was an old hand.
Oh. Okay, I've got your question.
Thank you, Melissa and Senator Brownsberger. That was really an excellent explanation of the bill and support for it. I'm not sure, I might have missed, is there a residency requirement? So that we're not talking about people who, you know, a month ago had the terrible 6-month point and then moved to the state to take advantage of it.
So a really great question. And yes, there is a residency requirement in the law, so that you have to be established resident of the Commonwealth in order to be eligible and qualify for medical aid in dying. Great question.
Ben, and then Helene.
Melissa and Senator Brownsberger, thanks. I just want to underscore Senator Brownsberger's and his father's observation about people when they enter into this process. There was an important study from Oregon, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where they looked at about 300 people who wanted to do this. Only a few of them did, but the rest responded that expanded their mental health and their sense of autonomy and sense that they could act on this when they wanted to. And it improved their relationships with families and their whole sense of self. So I'm glad to send that study off, but there's a lot of empirical evidence to support what Senator Brownsberger said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helene, is that correct? Or is it Helene?
Helene,
Helene, okay, Helene, and then Ryan.
I was just wondering, is this the same organization as Death with Dignity?
That is a great question. We are two separate organizations. Ultimately, I think the original organization was the Hemlock Society that started decades and decades ago. But we work very closely with Death with Dignity National Center. So while we're two separate orgs, we are in partnership.
So they're supportive of this particular bill and the limitations on it also.
Yes. So we know, and I think Senator Brownsberger said it very well, like this bill is almost too restrictive. There's a lot of barriers in it. However, it is been very well thought through, given the work, or just the time it's been. I think it's been originally filed in 2008, and so there's been a lot of work that has been done over the years, back and forth. So it's not perfect, but it is good and it is safe. But yes, Death with Dignity National Center. I actually was on a call earlier today with my counterpart there, and we were talking about some work we can do. And the senator participated in an event last week that we partnered with them on for a legislative briefing at the State House. So they are supportive.
Thank you.
There's no competitive bill. This bill that we're trying to get done. There's nothing else in the mix.
Right. Good point.
Ben, is that a new hand or old hand? Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Senator and Melissa, for joining us, and thank you for your work on this. I'm supportive of this. I was just wondering if there's any implications from a life insurance perspective for people that go through with this.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, thank you. So because the requirement under the law would be that the cause of death is on the death certificate is the underlying disease and not suicide. There isn't. And then it's written into the law that life insurance cannot be denied for family members of people who utilize this option, really making that distinction that the life insurance is preserved, but also that this isn't suicide. Great question. Thank you.
Carol,
Carol.
I see a hand from you.
I have so many things I'd like to say. Melissa, you and Will know how important this legislation is to me. It's like a bucket list item, and I want to do everything I could possibly do to help the legislation move along. Many years ago, I undertook a project of, I created a book for people to record and share their end of life wishes. And I found myself involved in the whole sort of death positivity movement. And I run death cafes locally, which are conversations around all kinds of subjects, death related. And the bottom line is always, absolutely always, it comes down to this concept of a good death. Nobody sort of, wants to embrace death as a very exciting eventuality, but we're all going there. And if there are ways of providing autonomy and self-respect and a modicum of control in the face of suffering, to ask people to, leave their homes in Boston and establish residency in another state, or I don't know if I'd heartily recommend Amy Bloom's brand new book about what her husband and she went through. They had to go to Europe, and the hoops that were required to sign on with Dignitas, which is an international organization which provides this option. It's just, it's cruel and it's disrespectful. So I just want to say thank you so much to both of you and all of your colleagues for moving this along. And you know how to reach me. I'm happy to do anything I can.
Careful, as an advocacy organization, Carol, I'll take you.
I know. The minute you raise your hand. But my hand is raised.
Thank you. I will be in touch. I would also like to say, to your point, we've had an advocate recently. Actually, her cancer treatment stopped working in January. She lived in Gloucester with her husband for 30 years, and she moved to New Mexico and established residency and utilized their law. And it was a horrible experience. She was able to utilize it, but it was awful. And the thing that she actually said, she was a therapist for a number of years, and both she said before she passed and her husband have said that they feel very blessed and privileged to have had the resources to do that, and that this is not just it is a justice issue, it's also a social justice issue, autonomy issue, but social justice, because there are people that would not have this option as it stands right now that would benefit from it greatly, and because of the resources to have to go to another state, it's just out of reach, and that is unacceptable.
Especially at that moment in your life when you're facing, your worst nightmare. I also want to say that I had the privilege of testifying at a state house hearing a couple of years ago, and your emphasis, Melissa, on the safeguards is so critical, because so many people came to that hearing completely not understanding, Will, to your point, how strong these safeguards are. This is not easy peasy by any chance. So I thank you for emphasizing that, and that needs to be central to the messaging.
Yes.
Great. Then any other final questions that folks have?
I have a final question.
Yes.
I know that law didn't pass 5 or 10 years ago. Is there any chance that this one would do better? There was a law in the same.
So there was you're absolutely right. And this is, of course, a concern. There was a ballot question. It was in 2012, so it's 10 years ago. I think opinion has moved during those 10 years. I think this bill, with the safeguards that it includes, I think is very strong and overcomes the objections that some people have. I think the bill had enormous, I mean, it almost passed last time on the ballot. And I think at this point, people in the legislature are ready to give this bill a fresh look and do the right thing. So I'm hopeful.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. And Senator Brownsberger, enjoy whatever event that you're also that you have as well.
It's going to work out fine. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank you
both.
all. Thank you, Senator. Thank you,
Zoom
Carol.
applause.
Thanks for
and
joining
then
us.
we will have Sheriff Tompkins shortly. I also promised Cassie White from Fenway CDC that if she can, to give a short update on some of the housing legislation that we've been hearing about and also that the committee has supported. So Cassie, I'll put you on spotlight if you want to talk for a few minutes to give us an update, since I know that the Fenway CDC does great work.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for inviting me here, and thanks everyone for offering this space for a few minutes to talk about our housing work. Just in case folks aren't familiar with Fenway CDC, we're a neighborhood-based affordable housing developer. So we do focus primarily on the Fenway. We have about 400 affordable housing units in our neighborhood. And then we also provide workforce development programs. We have food access programs. And then we also do a lot of really amazing organizing and policy advocacy work. And I realized that I may not have introduced myself. So I'm Cassie White. I use she, her, and I'm the organizer at Fenway CDC. So we heard a little bit from Rep. Livingstone about TOPA already. That is one of our primary bills that we're hoping to pass this session. And Jonathan, if I'm able to share my screen, I have just a couple quick slides.
I will give you, I'll make you co-host so that you can screen share.
Thank you. And so the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act is, the lead sponsors are Senator Jalen, Rep. Livingstone, and Rep. Consalvo. They have been really amazing. Like Rep. Livingstone had said, TOPA had been filed last session, got all the way to Governor Baker's desk, was vetoed, and with not enough time for the override. And so we're really working hard as the TOPA Coalition to make sure that that is not a repeat. And so really appreciate Ward 4 also being an endorser of the bill, and really seeing the value in it. Just in case folks aren't familiar with exactly what TOPA would do, it gives tenants the opportunity to purchase their building if it were up for sale. And so they're just, it's just that first right of refusal. So they're brought to the table. So it prevents a lot of those like backroom deals that sometimes happen, especially with larger investors where they come in, they buy a building for a lot of money, and then they increase rents. And all of the tenants have to move out because they no longer can afford to live in their homes. And so TOPA would bring tenants to the table to give them an opportunity to purchase their own home. And it could be in partnership with a nonprofit like a CDC. It could be to organize their own co-op or a tenant union. And so this year we are coming up on the end of this session. The bill is still in the Joint Committee on Housing. We just got an extension to June 30th. And so we've been really working hard as a steering committee to do meetings with the Baker administration to know whether, if it did make it to his desk again, if he would veto, what concerns they might have so that we can make adjustments. And so still working on that front. We're also working with Chair Keenan. There were some specific concerns around family trust. And so we were able to make some adjustments to make sure that buildings could pass within families and not trigger TOPA. And so we are hopeful that this will be enough that we can see TOPA pass this session. If not, we are looking forward to when there is a new governor in the office in the next session. But hopefully we won't have to, we'll be talking about implementation. But wanted to just give you the date for our next full coalition meeting. It's on Thursday, June 9th at 11 a.m. So I'll be sure to send the email to Jonathan and he can pass that along. And I can drop the website and the email in the chat. Just wanted to really briefly talk about some of our other housing work, but I also see that Sheriff Tompkins is here. So Jonathan, I'll defer to you.
I'll say take them to like 7:25. Okay,
Awesome. So there is a new part of the Boston zoning code called affirmatively furthering fair housing. It gets pretty wonky, but it basically makes developers analyze historic patterns of exclusion and displacement of protected classes. And so we think about the racial exclusion and displacement in particular, but also in terms of familial status, disability. And so we as housing advocates are still trying to figure out how this piece now within the Article 80 process will work, how we can use it to advocate for better housing, more affordable, more inclusive. And so we're having a workshop coming up on June 7th that you all are invited to, and it'll focus specifically on development within the Fenway. And then we're really excited about rent stabilization. We had a teach-in recently. There's a listening session coming up. And so I'll drop these chats in the link too, or drop the links in the chat. And then finally, all of this work is housed within Fenway CDC's organizing committee. And so we're also working on within the Coalition for a Truly Affordable Boston to improve the inclusionary development policy. We're part of the Payment in Lieu of Taxes Action Group, which holds our nonprofit institutional neighbors accountable for their pilot payments. We're also doing a 55 bus campaign to reimagine that route, so to make sure that it continues to serve Fenway residents. And so if y'all are interested in joining and learning more, we're having a pizza social coming up. You're welcome to join any of our meetings. And you don't necessarily have to be a Fenway resident. If you're amped about any of this work, we would be happy to have you. So I will stop sharing and drop all of those links in the chat. And thanks so much for having me here.
Awesome, thank you. And then any quick questions for Cassie? Ryan, I see one from you in the chat.
Yep, sorry, I just had to unmute. Should the AFFH, I don't know the acronym or ACT or whatever it is, should that be included in current BPDA filings as its own subsection? How do we look for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it only applies to projects that were filed after March 15th, 2021, and then small projects are excluded. So it likely is in those massive packets. We have also been seeing that sometimes it will get kind of added on afterwards. So if you have a specific project that you have a question on, I'll drop my email in the chat too, and we can certainly connect afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Bruce.
I'm going to hold my questions because I think Cassie just said she's going to drop something in the chat, which should cover my question. Thanks.
Okay, and so one question is, for the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which we did endorse before, and Matt Fowle gave a great presentation, what would be the most helpful thing that people on here could do to help move that forward this session?
I think stay tuned. We will be coming out with some actions, phone calls, emails. We're really just going to be pressuring our senators and representatives to make sure it gets passed. And we yeah, over the next couple of weeks, might be figuring out some of those details. So I will absolutely be in touch. And again, really appreciate the endorsement and the support.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's one thing like this and the kind of the Homes Act language around eviction ceiling are things that were like got in at the end of the last session. Baker vetoed, but they're both very important housing provisions that the legislature should do to finish their job the last session. I see a quick question from Helene asking about how the bill relates to like buildings of different sizes, if there's any kind of threshold for application.
That's a really great question, and I actually don't know the answer. So again, I'll drop my info in the chat, or Helene, if you want to send me your email, direct message me, and I'll definitely, that's something that I should know. So thanks for raising that.
Awesome, but yeah, thank you. Any final questions? Well, can I get a round of applause for Cassie and the great work of the Fenway CDC? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. We're lucky to have the Fenway CDC as kind of a great community ally. And then I will bring up Sheriff Tompkins. Sheriff Tompkins, I'll put you on spotlight. You can talk for a little bit, and then we'll do some time for Q&A.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it. I'm sorry about all the lights. I'm down at the Chamber of Commerce event down at the in the Seaport, and so I've got this bright light going on. But I thank you for the opportunity to hop on your call. There are three things that I want to touch on. And I'm going to begin with Mass and Cass. The situation in Mass and Cass really it's becoming untenable again, unfortunately. I've been on the phone with the mayor's office and the Boston police a number of times this week, basically saying that we really have to do something about this. I think, as many of you know, we did offer to have people stay at my facility where they can get housing, healthcare, family reunification, medication, and the like. But there was some discussion around the fact that people thought that we were trying to criminalize people, or that we were trying to heighten our budget, or somebody just popped in, or heighten our budget or up our count. First of all, it would have cost me money to do that, and it would have cost a lot of money. But my thing here is I was hired by the voters of Suffolk County to address the needs of Suffolk County. And this Mass and Cass situation is a humanitarian crisis. So for anyone to think that we were trying to profit on that is just wrong. It's wrong and it's ill-advised. We were trying to do the right thing. But there are some groups in the city that saw it a different way, which is cool. And they were able to influence the courts basically not to have us engage. My offer is still on the table. If they want to utilize it, it's fine. I think the city is spending an inordinate amount of money to house people in hotels and the like. But I just want you folk to know that we weren't trying to criminalize anybody, and that we thought that we were doing the right thing there by trying to get people to have a place that, particularly with the winter coming, where they wouldn't freeze to death. The second thing that I want to touch on is the phone calls. We've gotten a number of calls about the phone calls and the fact that the state says that they want to put $20 million out there in the next budget to address that. I think $20 million is a good start. The longest journey begins with the first step. And the reason I say that is they want that $20 million to go across 14 sheriff's departments, the Department of Youth Services, and the Department of Corrections. That's not enough money to facilitate all of that. Principally, that money is used for inmate benefits, meaning that we are not a profit center again there. All that money by statute, has to go to inmate programming. Secondly, money that comes in from the phone calls is used for surveillance. We have actually been able to bring a number of cases forward with the DA's office and the Boston Police, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere Police Departments by the things that these guys, and most of the guys, are saying on the phone calls. They know we're listening, but they still want to talk about the things that they're doing that's illegal. And so you have that, and then you have the maintenance of the system. We have to keep that system up and maintained. So surveillance, maintenance, and programming. If the state wants to come forth with enough money to cover all of that, we, meaning the sheriffs, and I'll speak on behalf of the sheriffs, I am the president of the Mass Sheriffs Association, are more than willing to step aside and let the state pay for that and let the inmates have free phone calls. We get it. But the legislators need to understand that that's not enough money. The last thing I want to touch on, and I've talked to several people in the course of the last couple of weeks about this, is the 4 deaths that we had at the Sheriff's Department last summer. And people are of the information that we did something to cause those deaths. We did not. 3 of the 4 people that were there died within 48 hours of being with us. 48 hours, less than 2 days. Now, because of HIPAA regulations, I cannot discuss what their medical situation was. But what we've said to the families and anybody that wanted to ask us about that is, if people want to find out what happened to those individuals, they first have to go to the courts to petition to be that person's representative. Once the courts come forth and say that you can be that individual's representative, then they can go to the medical examiner's office, and the medical examiner can then give them much more information than we can as the Sheriff's Department, because we are governed by those HIPAA laws. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that we didn't just willy-nilly let people pass away in our facility. We do yeoman's work trying to take care of the individuals that are remanded to our care. I just want to emphasize, these folks showed up at our doorstep, as do many, very, very, very ill. So I will take any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you so much. I see a hand raised from Bruce.
Good afternoon, Sheriff Tompkins. Bruce Bickerstaff here.
Hey, Bruce, how are you?
I'm glad that you laid these subjects out for people's further understanding, because law enforcement is a very difficult subject, because many people don't understand beyond this. But I want to ask you, looking forward, what are some of the things that you see that are important from your office as the sheriff that you want to implement and move forward in the future?
There's a couple of things, Bruce. Beginning with, we talk to the legislators a lot to talk about the fact that we need more beds for mental health and substance abuse use outside of a correction facility. But because of the scarcity of beds, if someone does something untoward because they may have a little difficulty mentally, or they're trying to feed an addiction, they come to us if they've broken the law. I understand that. I get that. But these folks should not be there. I want to say that again. They should not be there. And we talk to legislators a lot about the fact that we really do need to have more money spent for beds for mental health and substance abuse outside of a correction facility. Additionally, what I would love for people to do is to go to our website, Bruce, to see what it is that we do, the number of programs that we have that we're offering to individuals when they come to our care. Unfortunately, the media only writes about the Sheriff's Department or law enforcement when something bad has happened, when something untoward has happened. And we have tried mightily over decades to get the media to talk about our programming and how we want to be, or how we are, not want to be, how we are a committed community partner, but we just cannot get traction for that. This mental health substance abuse issue is very serious. I'm not sure if the people on the call know that when you go to jail, when someone goes to jail, that facility becomes the primary healthcare practitioner for that individual. And so whether you have the common cold or you need a kidney operation, the taxpayers have to pay for that. Now, back in the case of Mass and Cass, where people thought we were trying to criminalize individuals, what I've also said is that I think there needs to be a more intimate relationship between the Department of Public Health and the Department of Corrections. The Department of Public Health can send their doctors in, send their healthcare practitioners in to work with my staff so that people understand that we are doing the right thing. But we are, Bruce, overwhelmed with the number of people that arrive at our doorstep that is pretty ill. I also want to highlight one program for you, since you asked about that. About 5 years ago, I began a program called Family Matters. And what we do at Family Matters is we work with individuals that are remanded in our care that come from the most dysfunctional or chaotic households, because we don't want people to go back into an uncomfortable situation. Now, here's the rub. We have to get written permission. We work with the families and act as an intermediary between the families and social service agencies. Oftentimes, people don't know that there are social service agencies out there that can address their issues, or they don't know how to interact with those social service entities. And so we act as an intermediary between that individual and whatever social service agency there is to say, how can we help? Because that's really what we want to get done. Now, the interesting thing about that is this. When we take a holistic approach and work with the entire family unit, we have had some great success with that. And let me illustrate this to you. The recidivism rate, or that rate which people keep coming back to jail in the Commonwealth, is 46%. 46%. Nationally, the recidivism rate is in the 60 percentile. And our family members, in our Family Matters program, that recidivism rate is 7%. 7%. As I just mentioned, in the Commonwealth, it's 46%. In our Family Matters program, it's 7%. And so I just want to illustrate the fact that if we have that holistic approach where we're not just dealing with the individual, but we're trying to service the entire family unit, some pretty good things can happen from that. And so that's just one of the programs amongst many that we do to really try to help people improve their station in life and stay out of the criminal justice system.
Thank you. One follow-up question.
Yep.
The idea of out of sight, out of mind, when it comes to the general public, we recognize that when we drive through that area, the nuisance and the appearance of carnage to go on there. What's your opinion, or what do you think is the better approach from the sheriff's office as to how we manage these things? Because it is a very large, I call it air in a long balloon. You push it and air moves in one direction or the next. What do you think in the next 4 years can be done, and what teams need to be formed to address?
Well, let me just say this. Before I can talk about what needs to go on going forward, let me talk about what happened looking back. When the Long Island Bridge came down, Mayor Walsh took one of the buildings, an old printing building in the New Market Square area, and turned that into a 450 bed shelter for not just homeless, but homeless and people that have some of the issues, are confronted with some of the issues that I just talked about. The way we found out about that, Bruce, is I read about it in the newspaper. And I called Mayor Walsh. And I said, because in the newspaper, it said that City Hall had spoken to the Sheriff's Department and to the people that work in the New Market Square area. Well, that's not the case. They never spoke to us. And so I called the man. I said, listen, the newspaper says that you spoke to us. You did. And we had a pretty intense conversation about that. My thought was, if we knew that this was going to happen, we could have put a plan in place, not just with the Sheriff's Department in New Market Square, but with the neighborhood associations, with the businesses that are in that catchment area. That never happened. And so when things spiraled out of control, and we were told that people would come, they would get their medication, and that they would be in casework. There would be a casework mechanism set up for them, and that they would not congregate on the streets. Well, we see that is not the case. So now that's going back. When you talk about what can we do going forward, we really do need a collaborative effort between the community groups, the businesses, the residents, City Hall, and the State House, as well as the Sheriff's Department, since we're right in that catchment area, to formalize and come up with a plan that makes some sense, frankly. I think that the inordinate amount of money that the city is paying to house people in hotels, I wouldn't have done it that way. I get it, but I wouldn't have done it that way. But when you have a facility like mine, where I say, look, I will take 100 individuals into my care for nothing, and you don't do it, well, I'm not sure who's on first and what's on second. I'm not sure who's calling the shots there, you see. And so as much as we're going to try to continue to address this situation for the folks that are impacted by homelessness, mental health issues, and substance abuse issues, we can't do it alone. And so we're going to need the muscle and the might of the city, the state, the community organizations, the neighborhood organizations, and the businesses down there to make this something that's going to be able to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions that folks have? Helene. Helene, did you have a question?
Yes, yes. On another topic, do you know anything about the state of bail in Massachusetts? Can people, if people don't have the money to pay the bail, can they get out? Unlike in other states, they can't.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about bail appeal?
Yes, bail.
Yes. I know there's a movement to repeal bail and do away with it. I tell you the God's honest truth, depending upon the severity of the offense, I totally agree with that. If in fact you cannot make a $50 or $100 bail, that means that the taxpayers are now going to foot the bill into the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to have people incarcerated. So I know that there's a movement to get rid of, hey, how are you? Good to see you. To get rid of bail, and I'm all for that. And I've gone on record as saying that I think bail should be done away with it in certain cases. Now, if you have murder, arson, rape, so on and so forth, then that's pretty serious, grievous crimes. But if you're a low-level nonviolent offender, to keep someone in jail because they're indigent and they cannot afford a $50 or $100 bail, to me is ass backwards, and it's just ridiculous. And so I will keep speaking out on the fact that I think we need to change that system. And actually, there's a movement nationwide, frankly, to look at bails and doing away with bail. Where it stands right now in the Commonwealth, I unfortunately can't tell you because I honestly, and I apologize, I just don't know where it's at right now. But I know there is movement to address that situation.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions that folks have? I'll ask one of my own. So obviously that the sheriff's office is dealing with kind of the population currently incarcerated. Are there any policies that kind of you're advocating for on the state level to help reduce the total number of the incarcerated population, of what the state can do to kind of reduce both people who end up getting caught up in the system, as well as reducing recidivism so that when people leave, they don't end up coming back?
So that's a good question. So when I arrived at the sheriff's department in 2002 with the then Sheriff Cabral, on an average daily basis, we had somewhere between 24 and 2,500 individuals every day. That number now is between 1,000 and 1,100 people. So what's happened here is, and actually I will give the courts some props for this. What has happened here is the courts are really beginning to look at who really needs to be in jail. Okay, prosecutors, principally, actually tell you the God's honest truth, under Rachel Rollins, also looked at who should be in jail and who should not be in jail. It costs $55,000 to $65,000 annually to incarcerate one person. As I say, I've got on any given day between 1,000 and 1,100 people in my facility. And so that number has dropped incredibly. And I think you're going to see that happen more. I think we really need to address, Jonathan, the number of women that are incarcerated. And unfortunately, that number is escalating and going up. But oftentimes, the women are getting caught up in a trap by a boyfriend or a husband that has had them muling drugs or holding guns. The guy gets away, the lady goes to jail. And so the courts are also looking at that. Prosecutors, and there are a number of progressive prosecutors throughout the country. In fact, I just came back from a conference in New Jersey that spoke to progressive DAs and progressive prosecutors to look at how we change that. It's not going to change overnight, Jonathan, but the cost is just astronomical and it keeps going up. And it's not like government woke up one day and said, oh, we are incarcerating too many people. Government woke up and said, oh, it costs too much money to incarcerate these folk. With that said, we need to strengthen those community organizations and the social service organizations to help people with whatever their situation is. So until the legislators really put more money into the social service agency and into beds to treat mental health and substance abuse, It's a system that's kind of running rampant, but the number of people that are incarcerated is going down slowly. Government moves at a glacial pace, but it is beginning to go down. And we, meaning the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, and actually a vast majority of the 14 sheriffs in the Commonwealth, are working mightily to decarcerate or not have people come back to jail.
Great, thank you. And then any other questions that folks have, and you can drop a question in the chat, raise your hand physically, or raise your hand on, or kind of unmute, or physically, or through the app, through Zoom, or just unmute and ask your question yourself. Going once for questions. Going twice for questions. Okay. Hearing none, if you can just drop in the chat any information for folks who want to learn more about your campaign, kind of get involved, etc. That would be great. And can I get a round of Zoom applause for Sheriff Tompkins?
Oh, that's so nice. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But Jonathan, let me say this. I believe you know Nadia Levinsky in our department. She's on all of these calls. If you do get any questions, please just send them to Nadia, and we'll get the answers back to you and your folk in lightning speed. And
Okay.
I thank you for having me on the call tonight. I think these issues are very, very important. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you. Thank you so very much.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Good night, folks.
And then